Look what you did! This aircraft is compromised because of your negligence!
The massive hangar at Nellis Air Force Base hummed with the sound of high-pressure air tools and shouting mechanics. It was 3:30 p.m. on a scorching Tuesday in Nevada. In the center of the polished concrete floor sat the Air Force's crown jewel, a $60 million F-35 Lightning II stealth fighter. Its gray skin gleamed under the bright halogen lights, looking like a predator ready to pounce. Moving slowly around the edges of this high-tech world was Arthur, a man who seemed to belong to a different century. Arthur was 72 years old, with a bent back and a limp in his left leg that he tried hard to hide. He pushed a yellow mop bucket with squeaky wheels, his gray coveralls stained with years of grease and hard work. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Most of the young pilots didn't even know his name. To them, he was just Pops, or the janitor, a part of the background furniture like the tool chests or the fire extinguishers. Lieutenant Brad Miller, a 24-year-old pilot with a fresh haircut and an ego bigger than the jet he flew, walked into the hangar with his helmet under his arm. He was the squadron's top gun, and he made sure everyone knew it. He was laughing with his wingman, walking straight through the wet spot Arthur had just mopped. Arthur stopped and leaned on his mop handle, watching the dirty boot prints ruin his work. He didn't say a word, just sighed and dipped the mop back into the water. Brad stopped and looked back, not to apologize but to sneer. "Watch where you're mopping, old-timer," Brad said, his voice echoing in the hangar. "We have a war game to win at 4 o'clock. Try not to trip over your own feet." Arthur looked up, his eyes a piercing blue beneath bushy white eyebrows. "Just doing my job, Lieutenant," Arthur said softly. "Safety first. Wet floors can be dangerous." Brad laughed, shaking his head. "Safety? You wouldn't know danger if it hit you in the face. Just keep the floor clean so the real men can work." He turned his back on Arthur and climbed up the ladder toward the cockpit of the F-35. Arthur watched him go, a faint, sad smile playing on his lips. He remembered a time when he was that young, that arrogant, and that fast. But that was a lifetime ago, before the medals, before the crashes, and before the silence. The atmosphere in the hangar changed at 3:45 p.m. The ground crew chief, a burly sergeant named Rodriguez, waved his hands frantically. "Shut it down. Shut it down," he yelled. The whine of the F-35's auxiliary power unit sputtered and died. The hangar went silent. Brad popped the canopy open and looked down, his face flushed with anger. "What is the hold-up, Rodriguez? I have a takeoff slot in 15 minutes. Sergeant Rodriguez wiped sweat from his forehead with a rag. "It's the number 2 fuel pump, sir. The computer is throwing a code. It won't engage. We can't start the main engine." Brad slammed his hand against the side of the cockpit. "Fix it. This is the final exercise. If I don't launch, the squadron fails." The mechanics swarmed the jet like ants. They plugged in laptops, checked valves, and argued over schematics. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The base commander, General Vance, walked onto the floor, looking at his watch. It was now 3:55 p.m. "Status, Lieutenant?" the general barked. "We are grounded, sir," Brad admitted, his voice tight. "Technical failure. These guys can't figure it out." Arthur had stopped mopping. He stood in the shadows near the tool bench, listening. He closed his eyes. He could hear the faint hissing sound coming from the underbelly of the jet, a sound so soft that the young mechanics, deafened by loud music and turbines, had missed it. It was a sound Arthur knew better than the voice of his own wife. He hesitated. He knew his place. He was just a janitor. But he also knew that look in the general's eye. They needed this jet in the air. Slowly, Arthur limped forward, pushing his mop bucket aside. "Excuse me," Arthur said, his voice raspy but clear. The mechanics ignored him. He stepped closer, right up to Sergeant Rodriguez. "Excuse me, Sergeant." Rodriguez spun around, stressed and angry. "Not now, Arthur. Can't you see we have a crisis? Go empty the trash cans. Arthur didn't move. He pointed a gnarled finger at a small access panel near the rear landing gear. It's not the computer, Arthur said calmly. It's the bypass valve. It's stuck halfway open. I can hear the air bleeding. Brad looked down from the cockpit and laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. Oh, this is great. Now the janitor is an engineer. Somebody get him out of here before he breaks something. The general, however, didn't laugh. He looked at Arthur. He saw the way the old man stood. Not like a cleaner, but like an officer. Wait, General Vance said, holding up a hand. What did you say, Arthur? Arthur looked the general in the eye. The bypass valve, sir. Give me a wrench. A 3/4 inch. I can seat it in 10 seconds. This is ridiculous, Brad shouted. General, we are wasting time. But the general nodded at Rodriguez. Given the wrench, the hangar went deadly silent. Rodriguez handed the heavy steel tool to Arthur. The old man took it, the weight feeling familiar and comforting in his hand. He didn't climb the ladder. He walked underneath the massive engine exhaust. He didn't look at a manual. He reached up blindly into the dark machinery of the wheel well. He closed his eyes, feeling the metal, his fingers reading the engine like braille. He found the valve. He tapped it once, sharply. Clang. Then he fitted the wrench and gave it a precise quarter-turn twist. Click. The hissing sound stopped instantly. Arthur pulled his hand back and wiped the grease on his coveralls. He handed the wrench back to a stunned Rodriguez. Try it now, Arthur whispered. Rodriguez looked up at the cockpit and gave the thumbs up. Brad pressed the starter button. A low whine began, building louder and louder until it turned into the thunderous roar of a healthy jet engine. The afterburner nozzle flexed. The beast was awake. The mechanics cheered. Brad sat in the cockpit, stunned. He looked down at the old man in the gray coveralls who was already walking back to his mop bucket. The general waved at Brad to launch, then turned and walked briskly toward Arthur. Arthur, the general called out. Arthur stopped, but didn't turn around immediately. The general walked around to face him. He looked at Arthur's face closely for the first time. The general's eyes widened. He looked at the scar on Arthur's chin, then at the way he held himself. My God, General Vance whispered. I know you. You're not Arthur the janitor. You're Colonel Arthur Higgins, the ghost of Baghdad. Arthur looked down at his boots. That was a long time ago, General. I'm just Arthur now. The general stood straighter, snapping a sharp salute to the man in the dirty coveralls. You flew the F-4 Phantom in Vietnam and the F-15 in the Gulf. You have 3 distinguished flying crosses. We studied your maneuvers at the academy. Everyone thought you died in a crash in '95. I survived, Arthur said quietly, but my legs didn't work so well anymore. And a pilot who can't fly. Well, I just wanted to be near the planes. This was the only way they'd let me stay. Later that evening, at 6:30 p.m., the squadron returned. Brad Miller landed his jet and climbed out. He walked into the debriefing room, still high on adrenaline, expecting praise. Instead, he found the room silent. The general was standing at the front, and sitting in the chair next to him was Arthur. But Arthur wasn't wearing coveralls. He was wearing a clean flight jacket the general had given him. Take a seat, Lieutenant, the general said coldly. Today, you almost failed your mission because of arrogance. And you were saved by one of the greatest fighter pilots this country has ever produced. Brad looked at Arthur. The shame hit him like a physical blow. He remembered the sneer, the watch where you're mopping. He walked over to Arthur. The room held its breath. Brad took off his own squadron patch, the Top Gun patch, and placed it on the table in front of Arthur. I'm sorry, sir, Brad said, his voice shaking. I didn't know. Arthur looked at the young pilot. He didn't gloat. He didn't yell. He just smiled that sad, wise smile. It's not about the patch, son, Arthur said softly. And it's not about the machine. It's about respect. Respect for the crew, respect for the danger, and respect for the people who came before you. You fly on our shoulders. From that day on, nobody at Nellis Air Force Base called him the janitor. They called him Colonel. And every morning, when the young pilots walked out to their $60 million jets, they would stop and salute the old man pushing the yellow mop bucket, knowing that the true master of the sky was walking right beside them.